Exposed, 7 spine-chilling tales of haunted foreign vacations that will leave you terrified. The sun draped the living room in warm hues as Mark looked over the family's vacation plans, his heart racing with excitement. After years of dreaming, the moment was finally here. They had booked a trip to Italy, a long-awaited escape from their small suburban town in Ohio. The living room buzzed with laughter as Danny and Mia rushed around, their joy palpable. But then, amidst their glee, one listing caught Mark's eye. It was for an elegant villa, a beauty set in the middle of the Italian countryside, except there was that footnote. The chilling mention of tourists who had vanished without a trace. "Oh, come on, Mark." Laura laughed, brushing it aside. "It's just folklore. Ghost stories." But Mark felt a chill slither down his spine. Something about that listing felt off. Italy was supposed to be a dream, but upon their arrival, the villa loomed like a malevolent giant. The peeling paint, cracked walls, and unsettling shadows clung to every corner. Even the vibrant vineyard seemed to whisper secrets. As the sun dipped beneath the hills, a sense of dread enveloped them, squeezing tighter as they sat down to dinner. Strange noises echoed in the hallways, whispers, shadows flickering just out of sight. While Danny and Mia were tucked away, "I saw someone," Mia's whisper trembled in the dark. Danny, trying to play the brave brother, could feel his heart racing. The monster lurking in the dark was very real to them. As they explored the nearby village, a local named Julia welcomed them with a smile that felt too bold, her cheerful words dancing ominously around the topic of missing tourists. "So many have come and gone," she murmured, her eyes glinting like shards of ice. The tension pressed down on Mark, especially as they settled in for the first night. While he poured Laura a glass of Chianti, shadows clawed at the edges of reason. Sleep came uneasily, plagued by nightmarish visions. In the morning, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Mark's unease rapidly intensified after discovering ominous reviews from previous renters. "Never leave the villa at night," they warned, chills slipping down his spine as defense mechanisms kicked in. Dread pooled in his stomach. With the local authorities brushing off their concerns, the boundaries of safety eroded. Friendly faces morphed into potential dangers, and every soft laugh transformed into a sinister echo. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Then came the decisive moment. Deep in the thick of the vineyards the sun had almost dipped, casting eerie silhouettes. They stumbled upon a hidden cellar. As they descended into darkness, the air turned cold, a chilling realization seized him. They had unearthed a truth far darker than they could have fathomed. Behind the villa's beautiful facade lurked horrors worse than shadows. As dread devoured his thoughts, Mark realized he had to choose: remain and protect his family, or give in to panic and flee into the night that had swallowed so many before. Could they escape? Or would they, too, find themselves lost in the haunted tales that lingered in whispers? The darkness wrapped around them tighter, threatening to consume all hope. The air in the cellar was suffocating, thick with the smell of damp earth and something metallic, a scent that sent Mark's pulse racing. He glanced nervously at the kids, now wide-eyed and shivering. They were no longer safe, not here. Not anywhere. He pulled them close, shushing Mia's frightened whimpers. "We need to go back," he whispered, trying to keep the tremor from his voice. But the darkness seemed to wrap around them, swallowing their words. With reluctant determination, Mark turned back toward the staircase, heart pounding like a drum. As they climbed, shadows shifted just beyond the reach of their flashlight. He strained to listen over the sound of his breathing, but it was a cacophony of whispers that glided through the air. They were faint, barely audible over the thump of fear in his chest. The cellar exits felt like they were closing in. "Dad," Danny's voice quaked. "I don't want to be here anymore." No one did. But there was no escape. Not yet. Mark reached the top and stopped dead in his tracks. A figure stood at the entrance, cloaked in shadows. Laura. She was supposed to be waiting in the living room, sipping her wine, unaware of their descent into the madness below. The sight of her filled him with hope momentarily, but as her eyes met his, a chill raced down his spine. They weren't filled with worry. They were blank, emptied of all emotion. "Laura?" he called out, his voice barely a whisper. She remained frozen, a silhouette against the dim light of the room. "You shouldn't have gone down there," she murmured, her tone unnatural. It was too casual, too eerie. "Is everything okay?" Mark felt his heart seize, dread pooling in the pit of his stomach. Before he could respond, the air changed again. A gust swept through the corridor, rushing over them like a cold knife. Shadows danced unnaturally along the walls, twisting into forms he'd rather not comprehend. The very structure of the villa seemed to warp, pulling at the seams of reality. "Dad, let us just get out of here," Danny insisted, tugging at Mark's sleeve. But when Mark looked down at his son, he saw something fleeting, a flash of eyes, wide with fear. Then they were gone. "Danny?" A cold dread emanated through him, paralyzing his limbs. He gripped Mia tightly, glancing back at Laura. "What happened to the kids?" There she started, but her voice trailed off. Everything felt wrong. The darkness surged around them, alive, as if the villa itself was awakening. Mark stepped back, but the shadows loomed larger, pulling him further from the doorway. "Get back!" he shouted, but Mia was already crying, her frightened wails piercing through the heavy atmosphere. Then, one by one, the vines and shadows coalesced, taking on the form of lost souls, trapped just beyond reach. They stretched their hands towards Mark and his family, mouths opening in silent screams. In that moment, he understood. Each ghost was a warning, a reflection of those who had vanished into the night before them. With a primal instinct, he yanked Mia closer, turning to flee back into the cellar, scanning for the only remaining option, the hidden path at the back he had nearly missed. But Laura's voice snagged his attention, pleading and twisted. "Stay with us, Mark. You don't want to leave me, do you?" As the shadows quivered, pulling him in, time froze. Choices loomed like specters in his mind. Was she still his wife? What was the truth lurking behind those eyes? With the menacing shadows drawing closer, Mark pressed forward to protect his children, plunging deeper into the pitch-black world below. Where would the path lead? Would he find safety, or would he uncover horrors that would haunt them all? Mark wrung his hands over Mia's head as they descended back into the cellar, the stench of damp soil enveloping them once more. It felt wrong, like walking back into a trap, a noose tightening around them. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the hidden path gnawed at him, a sliver of hope twisting through the chaos. "Come on," he urged, forcing his trembling body to press forward, heart thudding louder with each step. The darkness enveloped them, thickening like a fog as they slipped into deeper shadows. He switched the flashlight on, the beam slicing through the oppressive gloom. The flickering light revealed the damp walls, coated with moisture, but the path seemed to twist further, leading them away from what should have been their salvation. "Daddy, I don't like this," Mia whimpered, her small voice tiny against the massive weight of the dark. Mark wanted to promise her safety, to tell her it would be okay, but his throat was tight, constricted by fear. "Just a little farther," he whispered, but even he felt the lie. The air turned icy, each breath a painful reminder of the shadow's closeness. Then came the whispers again, louder this time, swirling around them like a frigid wind. Mark pressed his lips together, fighting against the urge to let panic take over. Whatever voices were circling them, they were alive with the pain of those lost before. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered. For a moment, darkness enveloped them entirely. Just as fear threatened to consume him, the light ignited again. But the path now stood barred by a flickering figure, obscured and shadowy, eyes gleaming in the dark like coals. Mark's breath caught. "Who are you?" he stammered, the question barely escaping his lips. The figure only smiled, a twisted grin that shook him to the core. "You shouldn't have come here, Mark. This place has its ways." The realization crashed over him. "What do you know about my family?" The figure's smile widened, and with a flick of its hand, the wall behind it shifted, revealing a scrawled message that twisted his gut. "The path you seek lives in the light. But to find your children, you must face the truth." Mia whimpered again, pulling at his sleeve. "Daddy, leave it alone." Mark's resolve wavered. Time felt suspended as darkness pulsed around them. The shadows seemed to close in tighter, whispering secrets that tickled his ears. The thought that they were not the only ones here felt suffocating. "Mark, you have to decide," the figure hissed, voice echoing like the cries of the lost. "Choose. Them or her." The weight of the choice sunk into his heart like a stone. "What do you mean?" he choked out, a desperate calmness settling around him. He thought of Laura, standing near the entrance above, her eyes empty yet pleading. He couldn't go back. Not like this. "Any path can lead to the light," the figure taunted, "but that which reveals the truth may take all." As Mark stood frozen, caught in a web of uncertain fate, the shadows began to morph into shapes his children's likenesses, ghostly smiles twisting into macabre grimaces. "Help us, Dad," a chorus echoed softly, tainted with anguish. "No!" he shouted, yanking Mia behind him protectively. He harbored no intention of letting the darkness consume them. The air thickened with dread as the walls seemed to breathe, and in that agonizing moment, reality quivered. Behind him, a low rumble echoed, a door creaked open, desperation tinged with a scent of decay. Mark turned instinctively, gripping Mia's hand tighter as he searched for the way out, but the darkness had other plans. The shadows whirled, and for a fleeting second, he glimpsed something moving within, a flicker of white light growing near the opening. Was it hope, or a danger waiting to ensnare him? In that instant, he was torn. Trust the light? Or succumb to the shadows? The moment stretched as he awaited an answer that might never come. What if the cost was higher than he could bear? And what really lay beyond that other door? Mark's heart pounded in his chest, a wild drum echoing in the silence, drowning out the sinister whispers and the low, rumbling creaks of the cellar. The flickering light felt like a heartbeat, wavering between life and death as it illuminated the figure standing before him, eyes like burning coals, fixed directly on him. "Choose," the figure hissed again, its grin stretching impossibly wide. The shadows around them danced, writhing like a disturbed nest of serpents. "You can save one. Which will it be?" Sweat bead on Mark's brow, trickling down his temples, and he could feel the world around him freeze in anticipation. Mia was clutching tight to his jeans, her little frame shaking with fear. "Please, Daddy," she pleaded, her wide eyes reflecting the beam of the flashlight. "Stay close," he murmured, pulling her just a bit closer, feeling her small body tremble against his leg. He had to think. What did the figure mean? Save one? What about Laura? The choice twisted in his gut, roiling like a storm ready to break. "Every light casts a shadow, dear Mark," the figure intoned, its voice dripping with a sickly sweetness. "Even hope. It's usually in the darkest places that we find the truth." Darkness wrapped around him, heavy and suffocating. Mark squeezed his eyes shut for a moment, a jolt of fear ricocheting through him. The whispers intensified, becoming a chorus. "Help us, Dad," they wailed again, faint, pitiful echoes that sliced through his already frayed nerves. Were they coming from his children? Did they need him? He forced his eyes back open, the light flickering again, uncertainty wrapping around him like a shroud. "I want to choose," he yelled into the dark, his voice trembling, both defiance and desperation layered in his tone. "I refuse to play your game." The figure leaned in closer, the shadows around it deepening, smothering the light until all Mark could see was the glint of those eyes. "There's always a price for defiance, Mark," it said. "Are you prepared to pay?" The ground quaked beneath him. Mia squeaked in terror, and Mark clutched her tighter. The walls began to pulse like a living thing, and he could feel an overwhelming sense of dread rising like bile in his throat. "Run!" he screamed, the word exploding from his lips as if it could shatter the terrors closing in around them. They bolted down the cellar path, dodging the seeping shadows that seemed to tear at their heels. Behind them, the whispers mounted to a cacophony, louder and more anguished, clawing at their sanity. "Daddy! What is happening?" Mia cried, her voice breaking into a panicked wail. "I don't know. Just keep moving." Mark shouted back, his pulse racing as the darkness seemed to reach toward them, fingertips of despair attempting to drag them into the depths. He spotted the flicker of white light again not far ahead, a glimmer of safety in the suffocating black. Suddenly, the walls closed in around them, almost as if alive, and he had to duck to avoid being crushed. A scalding flash of heat washed over him, and he could hear the figure's voice now, layered beneath the cries of the lost. "Remember, you chose this path, you'll find the truth." Mark pushed forward, heart racing, knowing he had to reach that light. As they neared the glowing doorway, he felt a sharp pain in his side, like an invisible blade slicing through the air, and he stumbled. "Daddy!" Mia screamed, fear making her voice crack. He caught her just as she nearly fell over. "No! We can't stop." But even as he said it, he felt the shadows clawing him back, past secrets unfurling from the darkness as if eager to reclaim him. The white light grew brighter, almost blinding, and he propelled himself forward, the moment stretching thin. What if the brightness lied? What if the figure was right? Trust in the light, Mark, it had said, but could he? Were they stepping into salvation, or into something far worse? With a quick glance back, he caught a last glimpse of the figure, now standing still, unmoving, watching with an expression cloaked in shadows. "Choose it," whispered, fading as the light enveloped them, and in that last moment, he felt heat reach out, ready to consume them whole. What awaited them on the other side? The light burst around them like a wave, a brilliance that stung at Mark's eyes. He shielded Mia, desperate to keep the darkness at bay. As they pushed through the glowing portal, he felt the shadows clawing at his back, dragging claws across his skin, leaving a trail of icy terror. Then they stumbled into a vast, empty hall. Cold stone walls loomed ominously, stretching far beyond the harsh glow of the light. Mark looked around, panic churning in his gut as silence enveloped them, a cruel contrast to the chaos they had escaped. There was no sign of the figure, no whispered choices. Just a deafening stillness that hovered over them, like a predator waiting to strike. "Mia?" His voice trembled in the void, and he turned to find her, shaking and wide-eyed, searching for reassurance. "It's okay. We're safe now." But the oppressive silence spoke louder than his words, urging doubt into his heart. He reached out, grabbing her small hand, feeling the warmth of her skin through the cold air. "We have to keep moving," he insisted, pulling her deeper into the hall. With hesitant steps, they advanced, the flickering light at their back slowly fading like a dying heartbeat. Mark's chest felt tight. The air grew heavier with every step, as if the darkness were a living entity, wrapping around them, suffocating and sinister. "It can't be over," he whispered, dread pooling in his stomach. "That thing wouldn't let us go that easily." Suddenly, a faint echo reached his ears, soft like the distant cries of children. Mark froze, holding Mia close, straining to listen. "Do you hear that?" he asked, his breath quickening. "Daddy, I don't like this place," Mia whispered, her voice small and trembling. He felt her grip tighten around his fingers. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of wails that chilled him to the bone. "Help us, Daddy, help." Each word twisted through him like a knife. They sounded like his children. A rush of fear surged, propelling him forward. "We have to find them, Mia." he urged, urgency flooding his veins. We'll find them. The walls began to shift, contorting, the shadows morphing into grotesque shapes that danced and flickered along the stone. Mark pushed onward, heart racing, each step becoming a frantic sprint. The whispers ratcheted up, urging them closer, pulling them into a deeper nightmare. Keep running. Mark shouted, dragging Mia behind him, not daring to look back. A doorway loomed ahead, its edges flickering like a flame, a promise of escape, or maybe a trap. A chill ran down his spine as they neared it, but he had no choice. He couldn't stop. Just as they reached the threshold, the door slammed shut with a deafening crash, and darkness poured in around them. The light was gone, completely extinguished. The whispers stopped abruptly, replaced by a low rumbling, deep and ominous, vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. Mia! Mark shouted, panic tightening his throat. Stay close. The ground began to tremble, and the walls emitted a menacing groan. A chilling realization froze him. It's not over, is it? He muttered, as shadows slithered toward them from every corner, reaching, grasping, threatening to swallow them whole. A bright flash erupted, illuminating the hall in a stark white light, and for a fleeting moment, Mark glimpsed ghostly faces trapped within the shadows, their mouths moving in silent screams. They were lost souls, victims of the choices made before. No, he breathed, fear clawing at his insides. We have to get out. Then, right in front of him, a chilling voice broke through the darkness. You have not chosen yet, Mark. He locked eyes with Mia, realization dawning. The choice loomed before him again, and they were trapped, cornered in a nightmare without end. Choose, the voice echoed, thick and potent with menace. As the shadows closed in, he felt the air thicken with despair. A blood-curdling scream echoed in the hall, and Mark knew they were not alone. Could he make the right choice this time, before it was too late? Would it cost him everything? The voice hung in the air, twisting around them like a noose. Mark's breath quickened as he squeezed Mia's hand tighter. There was something unholy in that command. The weight of dread crashed over him, forcing his legs to push back against the invisible tide, yet the shadows only crept closer, hungry for more. Choose what? He demanded, his voice raw with urgency. The air crackled, and he held Mia to him, drawing strength from her tiny form. Tell me. A chuckle rippled through the hall, sinister and hollow, filling the space with sickening echoes. You are surrounded by choices, Mark, and consequences. With every word, the shadows inched nearer, the darkness transforming into forms of anguished faces, mouths moving in a silent plea. Mark stumbled back, shock coursing through him. These were souls lost, forever trapped like the whispers of his children. His heart lurched. Were they real? Were his kids lost somewhere in this hell? No. Mark shouted, but doubt clawed at him like the shadows loomed about. He could feel their cold fingers brushing against his skin, tugging at his resolve. Something deep inside him urged to grab Mia and run, but he knew they wouldn't make it. Not yet. Choose, the voice cooed playfully, a tone mocking his despair. You can save one. Your heart or your blood. What kind of choice was that? His chest tightened at the thought. Blood churned in his veins, every instinct screaming to protect his daughter, while his other half ached for the children left behind. A sickening paradox. Was he trapped between impossibilities? Mia, he breathed, glancing down at her terrified face. A flicker of recognition flashed within her eyes, as if she understood his inner turmoil. I want to let them take you. But could he save either? The cold truth settled over him, heavy and suffocating. The shadows wriggled, swirling to form a dark vortex. It made its presence known, coiling closer, as if testing the bounds of his will. Choose, the voice was insistent, a desperate, suffocating whisper that clawed at his sanity. No. I want to choose. Mark yelled defiantly, but his voice felt small against the rising tide. It leered at him, daring him to make that impossible decision. His blood pulsed in fear, the darkness seemed to laugh at his resolve. Suddenly, the ground rattled violently beneath them, a tremor that sent dust swirling in the air. Shadows whipped around Mark and Mia, a whirlwind of palpable dread. He felt the embers of hope flickering out. You think you can fight the inevitable, Mark? The choices you make now define everything. The voice hissed, piercing through the chaos. As the shadows hissed and howled, Mark tightened his grip on Mia, her small body shaking against his. Time felt stretched, every second an eternity. The howling crescendo drew nearer, threatening to consume them both. Stay close. He shouted, but the words lost meaning in the suffocating chaos. His mind raced. He had to think. If he could just, maybe there was a possibility amidst this horror. A glimmer appeared in the darkness, what looked like a doorway, pulsing with faint light. Was it a mirage or their only salvation? Could he risk moving toward it? He hesitated for a heartbeat, the shadows hurling themselves at him, moving with a malicious speed. The voice returned, softer now. Choose or all will be lost. Mark's heart raced, the weight of his choice darker than the shadows surrounding them. How long did he have? He had to act. Let us go, Mia. He shouted, breaking into a sprint toward the light, each step a desperate gasp for freedom. Shadows clawed at their heels, a cacophony of wails and cries echoing in their wake. Would the light lead them to safety, or deeper into the abyss? As they leaped toward the glimmer, Mark felt the darkness lurch behind them, hungry and vengeful. Would they make it through this time? Or would the choice cost them more than they ever imagined? They dove for the light, each heartbeat a drum of urgency echoing through the swirling chaos. The world around them twisted toward salvation or disaster, Mark couldn't discern. The entrance shimmered like a mirage, flickering in and out of focus, dancing just beyond their grasp. Mark felt Mia's grip slip slightly, each second stretching into infinity. His pulse thundered. Hold on. He gasped, yanking her back as shadows closed in ruthlessly, clawing through the air with cold, biting fingers. He felt their breath on his neck, a wretched whisper of loss. The faces in the darkness anguished, pleading wrapped around his mind. Were those his children? Would he abandon them? He pushed through the fear, focusing on the light. It flickered, a heartbeat away from snuffing out. Panic surged as shadows coiled around him, transforming his sweat into icy droplets. With every step forward, the darkness seemed to moan, an ominous choir lamenting his choice. Mia! He shouted again, the sound lost amidst the screaming shadows. The light pulsed, brighter now, beckoning them like a lighthouse in a storm. If they missed this chance, they charged into the glow. And then nothing. A sudden stillness enveloped them, the shadows falling away like curtains in a forgotten theater. They stumbled onto solid ground, which felt oddly warm, pulsing beneath their feet. Relief washed over him, until it twisted into confusion. They were in a vast chamber, its walls glistening with strange symbols that writhed like live snakes. The air was thick, filled with an unsettling weight that pressured them down. Mia? Mark breathed, feeling her hand squeeze his in return. But there was something fresh in that grip, an unfamiliar warmth, pulsing like a heartbeat. He shot a glance down, and there it was, a small, crimson marking on her palm, like a brand. Mia! He barked, panic surging back, louder than the last echoes of the shadows. She met his gaze, eyes wide with terror and something else. A flicker of knowledge? The kind that throbbed with ominous understanding? It sent chills racing down Mark's spine. Daddy, what's happening? She whispered, her voice trembling. Before he could answer, the symbols on the walls glimmered, drawing his eyes. Each line pulsed in rhythm with Mia's mark, the same bright, violent hue. Anxiety coiled tightly in his gut. Was this magic? A curse? An angry growl erupted from the other end of the chamber, and Mark turned, dread pooling in his stomach. Emerging from the shadows was a tall figure, a shape draped in darkness, still and ominous. Its eyes glowed faintly, like embers in a dying fire, filled with an all-consuming hunger. "Choose," it hissed, voice echoing like thunder, reverberating through Mark's bones. There it was again. The tortured choice. The shadows writhed behind the figure, forming the lost faces of his children once more, silent screams trapped in their expressions. "Mia, we need to," his voice faltered. "Run!" she cried, and without thinking, they spun towards the far end of the chamber, fear propelling them forward. But the figure moved quicker, its form blurring the air as it lunged, an embodiment of terror and despair. Mark's heart raced, dread pooling in his throat. They had escaped one darkness only to plunge into another deeper and more malevolent than he had imagined. How many more choices awaited them? Was this just the beginning? As they darted forward, Mark scanned frantically for an exit, desperate to find a path through the madness. He could not let his little girl be consumed by the looming darkness. But which way would lead to freedom, and which would plunge them into eternal despair? Every step felt like a countdown. Would they evade the creature, or was the true horror still to come? Mark's breath hitched in his chest as they ran towards the unknown, shadows inching ever closer. They sprinted across the chamber, each heartbeat a frantic, pulsating reminder that they were not safe yet. The distance to the far wall seemed to stretch infinitely, every footfall echoing ominously behind them. The growl of the shadowed figure resonated, a low, menacing rumble that churned Mark's stomach. Sweat dripped from his brow, his legs aching with effort, but he couldn't stop. He just couldn't. "Mia, keep moving," he urged, glancing over his shoulder. The figure was closer, gliding unnaturally. Its eyes glowed with a feral intensity, hungry for souls. Mia was keeping pace, but her breath came in short gasps. "Daddy, what do we do?" "Just run," he shouted, forcing his feet to push harder. The symbols on the walls pulsed erratically in time with their frantic movements, as if the very chamber was alive, judging their every breath. Ahead, the wall loomed overwhelming, slick with a damp sheen that reflected Mia's mark like a beacon. It flickered, sparking an idea in his mind. "Maybe we need to touch it," Mark blurted out, his heart racing. The moment the thought formed, a sense of urgency twisted in his gut. They could end this madness, find out what this mark meant, find a way out. "No!" Mia cried, terror bursting forth from her. "What if it's a trap?" But Mark could feel the pull of the symbols, an inexplicable connection that wrapped around him like a tether. Within that frantic moment, he saw the figure lurch forward, its shadow expanding, consuming space like black smoke. If they stayed on this path, that thing would swallow them whole. "We have to try," he yelled back at her, adrenaline pumping through his veins. He could see it now, the wall was more than just a barrier. It was an invitation, a plea for help disguised as danger. He reached the wall first, grasping Mia's hand firmly in his. "On 3, we touch it together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. They pressed their palms against the stone. The moment their skin made contact, a jolt of energy crackled between them, a surge that was both electric and soothing. The symbols flared to life, glowing brighter until the chamber was bathed in a harsh, fiery light. It was dazzling yet terrifying. They both gasped as the warmth spread through them, wrapping around their fears, pressing deeper. The growl morphed into a piercing shriek that cracked the air. The figure recoiled, shadows twisting in agony. Mark's heart raced. Was this working? Had they found a way to break free from its grasp? But then the glowing symbols began to shift and sway, reconfiguring rapidly in a chaotic dance. Mark's mind spun. "What's happening?" he yelled over the cacophony, struggling to keep Mia steady. "I don't know," she cried, her small voice trembling. The shadows reacted violently, retreating from the light only to surge back with renewed fury. Mark felt it pressing against him, squeezing like a vice, encircling them and clawing for their flesh. He spun to face the looming maw of darkness, realizing in horror that the light, the very thing they had sought for safety, was becoming unstable. "Stay close, Mia," he commanded, holding her tightly. But the warmth of her hand was flickering, the brilliant light weaving tendrils of shadow, trying to pull her away. A flash caught Mark's attention. A shadowy face twisted in the darkness, mere inches from Mia, its eyes blazing with a desperate hunger. He gritted his teeth, feeling the walls close in. They were running out of time. "Push it away. You have to focus," Mark shouted, praying she could understand. As he rallied his strength, he felt the mark on her palm pulse furiously, as if responding to their desperation. "Together, Mia. We can fight this," he urged, feeling the pressure of despair bore down as the room began to warp. The darkness writhing around him screamed for release, an echo of someone he used to know. But did he have the strength left to battle the very shadows he had hoped to escape? The chamber trembled, a fissure of fear threatening to tear them apart. Was this the end? Or a new beginning? With every ounce of urgency left in his being, he braced for what lay ahead, unwilling to yield to the pull of despair what awaited them on the other side of the light. Would their desperate gamble unleash a greater evil? The symbols flickered violently, their brightness dimming and flaring erratically as if engaged in a battle against the shadows. Mark could barely keep his breath steady, each inhale feeling heavier than the last. He could sense Mia's fear rising, a palpable weight that clung to the air like smoke. "Mia! Focus!" he yelled, desperation pulsing through him. A blinding flash erupted as the symbols suddenly collapsed inward, forcing them to stumble back. Mark shielded his eyes, heart racing. The wall was shaking, more alive than it had ever been. Then it stopped. Silence wrapped around them like a shroud, so thick it was suffocating. Mark opened his eyes, half expecting the darkness to crash back in, but everything was still. "Mia?" he whispered, his voice trembling. He turned to look for her. The shadows loomed behind them, swirling and writhing, but she was gone. "Mia!" Panic clawed at him as he spun around, heart pounding in his ears. Then he saw her standing at a distance with her back turned, the glowing mark on her palm radiating a faint light. She looked entranced, her small frame framed by the darkness as if she were part of the chamber itself. The shadows writhed around her, but she didn't seem afraid. "Mia, come back." Her body swayed gently, almost like a leaf dancing in the wind. The glimmering mark pulsed rhythmically as if in sync with her heartbeat. Mark took a step towards her, hope igniting within him, but the darkness shifted, again closing in like a beast sensing an opportunity. "Mia!" he shouted again, his voice thick with urgency. Suddenly, she turned to face him, her expression strange. A blend of innocence and something else, something darker. "Daddy, it's beautiful," she said, eyes wide with awe. "No, it's not. It's a trap." He could feel the encroaching shadows thickening, drawing nearer, hungry for the chance to strike. "You have to come to me." But she stood frozen, entranced by the shadows swirling at her feet. "It's calling me, Daddy, can't you hear it?" The heavy growl returned, lower than before, pulsing through the air as if the very noise of it were a living thing, alive and waiting. Mark tore his gaze from Mia, realizing the shadows had morphed into grotesque shapes, whispering madness all around him. "Damn it, Mia, listen to me." He lunged forward, but the darkness surged, snapping like a pack of hungry wolves, forcing him back. With no choice but to stay awake, he racked his mind for a way to sever the connection, to pull her from this curse. Then it struck him, what if she could break the bond by recalling something they shared? Something they both cherished? "Mia, remember our trip to the lake? The campfire stories?" Her eyes flickered slightly, but the pull of the shadows was too strong. "No!" he shouted, each syllable shot from him like arrows puncturing the thick air. "Remember how we sang together? Remember the stars above? You have to fight it. A flicker of recognition crossed her features. Tears flowed down her cheeks. "Daddy, I'm scared. Think about the songs. The stories. Focus on me." The cymbals around them shimmered again, their rhythm responding to her struggle as if they were amplifying her hopes. Mia's mark flared bright like the sun, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. Mark felt it, the shift, the balance tipping. Could they break it? But the shadows retaliated, a deafening roar echoing through the chamber. The walls shook, the darkness seemed to stretch and fold in on itself, and Mark held his breath, praying. "Fight, Mia. Come back to me." With a final push, the light surged, illuminating the chamber and forcing the shadows to shrink back. But at that moment, the ground beneath them fractured with a deafening crack, splitting the chamber like a chasm. "Mia!" Mark screamed, reaching out as she began to slip, the shadows grasping for her. Then everything went dark. Was this the darkness that would consume them? Or a plunge into something far worse? What lay beneath the surface of the ground? What horrors waited on the other side? The answers lingered just out of reach. The darkness enveloped them, an oppressive shroud that pressed down on Mark's chest, suffocating hope. He blinked, trying to grasp at the fragments of light, the shimmers that had sparked just moments ago. But now, no flicker remained. No sign of Mia. The abyss enveloped him whole. "Mark," the voice was low, slithering through the shadows, familiar yet twisted. "You've lost." He clenched his fists, fighting back the fear clawing at him. No, he wouldn't accept this. He wouldn't let despair consume him. "Mia." His voice echoed, shattering the silence, ricocheting toward the unseen corners of the void. But then a soft glow appeared, trembling against the black. Mark squinted, heart pounding, pushing through the chaos, threatening to unravel him. It flickered like a candle in a storm, igniting something deep within. "Mia." He charged toward the light, arms outstretched, desperate. The shadows hissed, narrowing around him, but he would not yield. He burst forth into the glow, nearly tripping over a threshold he could scarcely see. Suddenly, the shadows receded, drawing back like a tide. The air cleared, revealing a vast, ethereal space, illuminated by stars that shimmered like 1,000 eyes watching. Mia? And there she was. Standing at a distance, near a glowing pool, her small body silhouetted against the shimmering water. The mark on her palm pulsed fiercely, sending ripples across the surface. The light encased her like an aura, contrasting boldly against the shadows that lingered at the edges. "Daddy," she whispered, as if awakening from a dream. "Help me." Mark's heart surged with love. He sprinted towards her, but as he reached for her, the shadows snaked back, clawing at him. "Stay away from her!" he bellowed, throwing himself forward, fueled by protective instinct. The darkness flared in response, swelling like a beast in agony, its cries echoing in the depths. "You cannot have her, Mark." The voice rasped, layered with 1,000 lost souls. "She belongs here." Mark's desperation igniting flames of rage. "No. She is my blood. You can't take her." As he reached out again, Mia held up her palm, the mark glowing brighter. "Daddy, remember." The cymbals around them pulsed in harmony with her heartbeat. "Focus on me." He willed. "Focus on love." The shadows recoiled, momentarily uncertain. For a breath, everything paused, time hanging on the precipice. And that's when it hit him. "Mia, think of the stories. The campfires, the laughter. Remember our songs." Tears poured from her eyes, but the glow on her palm cleared the air, tangling with the shadow's grip. "We sang about the stars, Daddy. And how they always shine." "Yes." He shouted, each word powerful, bursting with energy. "They shine even in the darkest times. Hold on to that light." Her expression shifted, determination breaking through the fog of fear. The mark surged, brighter than ever, light racing through her veins, deepening until it spilled into the surroundings, illuminating the cavern. Mark felt a shift beneath him. The ground trembled like a living thing. Was it breaking? Mia. Together. He leaped towards her, extending his arms wide, and she followed, each small step pushing back the darkness. Remember, shine. He urged. And they embraced, their hearts beating in synchrony. In that moment, the shadows shrieked as the light encased them in a dazzling glow. The chaos erupted around them, the cavern twisting, walls fracturing under the weight of light. Choose. The voice cried, desperation dripping with menace. You cannot escape. But they had chosen. Choose courage over fear, love over despair. The shadows began to roar but faltered, shrinking against the brilliance of the light. The oppressive presence withdrew, twisting and writhing, as Mark and Mia pushed forward. With one last deep breath, they dove straight into the light's embrace, and in an instant, the world shattered around them. Mark emerged into brilliant daylight, the warmth flooding over him, the air fresh and gleeful. He blinked against the sun, heart racing, only to find himself standing by the serene pool of the villa's garden. Every shadow, every horror, evaporated with each beam of sunlight. Mia. He spun around, desperate anxiety gripping him again, but her laughter rang like a melody. She stood nearby, unharmed, pulling petals from bright flowers as they danced in the gentle breeze. Daddy, look! She chirped, lifting a vibrant bloom toward him. That was too close. He exhaled, the relief pouring out of him. He scooped her up, holding her tight, cherishing this moment. You did it, sweetheart. We did it. As they savored the sun's warmth, a newly blossomed truce existed between them and the shadows that had so recently sought to consume. Mark peered back at the villa, finding its beauty unmarred. No mention of darkness, just the aroma of sun-kissed grapevines and splendid moments yet to come. They would leave it behind. The shadows could not follow them into the light of a new day. Let us go home, he said softly, squeezing Mia's hand. Together. And with that, Mark and Mia stepped forward, hearts anew with the knowledge that courage and love would always guide them through the darkest of nightmares. Thank you for being part of this journey. Don't let the darkness overwhelm your life. Choose the light today. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that'll take you on incredible adventures. Smash the like button now, and feed the algorithm to help us grow. Your support means everything. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Let's talk about the choices we make. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this resolution. Show them how love shines through the darkness.